Namaskaram to all, and let us start another session. So, Chadurmukha Samarambham Vakbhadacharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryandam Vande Guru Paramparam Ragadirogan Sadatanushaktan Asheshagaya Prasrudan Asheshan Alsukya Moharadidan Jakhana Yo Purva Vaidyaya Namostu Tasmai. We were discussing about the Vriddha Lakshanas of Tridoshas. Before that, we saw the Prakrita Karmas of Tridoshas. And we were trying to explain Yadha Dushtena Doshena, and then we stuck with the one description that is required in this regard. That is how we started all these descriptions. So we have seen the Vriddha Dosha Lakshanas. Like the last one was to see the Shleshma, Shwaitya, Shaitya, Sthaulya, Alasya, Gaurava, Angasada, Srodapidhana, Murcha, Tandra, Nidra, Shwasa, Kasa, Prasega, Hrilasa, Agnisada, Sandhi Visleshadibhihi Shleshma. So we discussed that these are all very simple and straightforward observations and documentations. Actual practice need not be this much simple. We have to understand this as such. I told that. Don't be prejudiced and be very open. Do not bring any neurology, immunology, or endocrinology into this. And don't evaluate, don't judge them for the time being, because that creates some sort of a resistance to understand. It is a big block in the process of learning. Now, we have to understand the lakshanas. So yathasum lakshanam and karma, that is what we were discussing about. Now we about kshina vayu, we find prasega, aruji, hrillasa, sapnyamoha, alpavak cheshtada, apraharsha, angasada. So apraharsham and angasadam, then agni vaishamyadibhihi kshinaha vayuhu pidayadi. A list of lakshanas and karmas. Each one should be looked into very seriously. Each one should be understood exactly. And the way in which these things are presented, the way in which these things are perceived by the individual, all these things are to be very keenly observed. Then Kshina Pittam, Stambha, Shaitya, Aniyada Todadaha, Aniyada Todadaha, Arojaka, Avipaga, Angaparushya. Angaparushya. It is very interesting. I'm not going to explain accidentally. When I saw this Angaparushyam, I am explaining. In the normal Prakrita Karma of Pitta, we find one word called Tanumardavam. Tanumardavam. When Pittam is Kshinam, we find Angaparushyam. Like that. Kamba, Gaurava, Nakhanayana, Shauklyadibhihi, Pittam Pidayadi. Then regarding Shleshma, Brahma, Udveshtana, Anidra, Angamarda, Pariplosha, Toda, Davadhu, Daha, Spodana, Vepana, धूमायन संधिशैथिल्य हृदयद्रव श्लेष्माशय शून्यत्वादिभिः और शून्यतादिभिः श्लेष्मा पीडयति आदिभिः श्लेष्मा पीडयति. A very interesting set of observations. So with that, we find a huge list of lakshanas of Kshina doshas. So we were discussing about dosha dushti, and primarily that dosha dushti is about dosha vruddhi and dosha kshaya, which is represented respectively by rupa vruddhi and rupa hani. There is one term called rupandaram, which we discussed in detail, but right away we are not going to the rupandaram, which is a savishesha avastha. We need to do a lot of homework before going to that rupandara stage. So we are not discussing it right away. We are discussing just about the very simple things like dosha vruddhi and dosha kshaya. And at this point, after seeing the lakshanas and karmas of vruddha doshas and kshina doshas, there is an important question. And that question we should not miss to ask. What is that question? What is dosha vritti? And what is dosha kshaya? See, we are discussing about the very, very basics. As I mentioned in our previous session, I am not trying to underestimate those who are present in the room, but I am inviting you all to see the things in a clearer light. So at this point, we have a very serious question. What is dosha vriddhi? What do you mean when you say that there is dosha vriddhi or dosha kshaya? What is the thing? What is the mechanism behind it? And what is happening actually? So we have to look more specifically. We have to travel deeper into the basics. First, let us try to understand what is dosha kshaya, just for the sake of convenience, that's all. So we are going to understand the body further dissected, not like the dissection of a dead body. We are trying to dissect the living body conceptually. It's a conceptual dissection. See, as we all know, a person is nothing but a unit of Panchamahabhutas and Atma. We have discussed this, we have stated this n number of times before. And we have seen this in Samhitas many times. And we have taken it for granted also. A person, a Purusha is nothing but a unit of Panchamahabhutas and Atma. Panchamahabhuta Shariri Samavayaha Purushaha. Panchamahabhutas are the fundamental units of any Karya. And we saw that they means the Panchamahabhutas organize into the human body grow, transform, mature, decay, and perish, which we mentioned earlier as that asti to vinashyadi journey. In this journey, food is one important principle, maybe the most important principle. Food is the most important principle in this asti to vinashyadi journey. The way in which the body receives food, digests it, transforms it, and distributes. So, the way in which the body receives, digests, transforms, and distributes the food is considered as the most important aspect as far as the capacity to survive is concerned. Capacity to sustain is concerned. In a different context, we have discussed this, and we saw that there are three agencies, three doshas. That is our principal concern, major concern. They operate in a living body, each one representing or accommodating a group of events or activities related to the state of survival. I'm delivering the sentences, the words quite slowly because I want you to be a bit contemplative on what I am speaking about. So each one of these three doshas accommodates a group of events or activities which are related to the very state of sustenance or survival. And these events or activities are all interconnected. It is true that the three agencies or the three doshas are individual units, but they are never independent. They are never independent. Being parts of a system, they cooperate with one another. Again, I'm saying something which is very familiar to everyone, which is deep rooted in our minds and buddhi. So, being parts of a system, these three agencies cooperate with one another, support one another, and make sure that the unit survives. And this concept of tridosha, what we call as tridosha siddhantam, is supposed to be the foundation of Ayurvedic understanding of Sharira. This is the foundation. But having said that, the fact remains. What is that? The Panchamahabhutas are the basic units of any Karyadravya, including Sharira. Pancha Mahabhutas are the basic units of any Karyadravya, including Sharira. So they are the basic units of the Sharira from A to Z, from Alpha to Omega, from the beginning to the end. And these Pancha Mahabhutas, they own certain gunas. These gunas are very interesting characters. And our understanding of gunas is also quite interesting. If you look into the textbooks, you will find them explained in different ways, in different contexts. Say, for example, Indriyarthas are a set of gunas. Indriyarthas, which is known as Vishesha gunas. Then we find descriptions about Indriyarthas, Shabdas, Parishascha, Rupamcha, Raso, Gandhaha, Kramad, Gunaha, Ghani, Lagnyabhuvam, Ega Guna Vruddhyanvaya Pare. Then we find another set of gunas called Guruvadi gunas. They are another set which are basically physical, and they show the physical characteristics of dravyas. Basically, there are modifications, especially Ayurveda has the Ayurveda acharyas have modified them in many ways, but fundamentally they represent the physical characteristics. Then, to highlight the uniqueness of each Buddha, we find explanations like Gharadrava Chaloshnatvam Bhujalanila Tejasam Agashasya Pradikataha Drishtam Lingam Yathakramam. So it is an explanation about the Lakshanas of Bhutas, which again is another set of gunas related to Panchamahabhutas. There are many other descriptions about gunas like Atma Guna, then Paradiguna. Paradigunas are very important in the Vyavahara, in the daily operations of our life. Paradigunas. We are not discussing the Paradigunas and the Atma Gunas here. Our area of interest in our present context is about the Guruvadi Gunas and maybe the Indriyarthas to some extent. In a Karyadravya, just visualize a Karyadravya, any Karyadravya. The Pancha Mahabhutas coexist. Any Karyadravya. Pancha Mahabhutas coexist. But the share of each Pancha Mahabhuta, each among the five Bhutas, in a Karyadravya or in two Karyadravyas, if we take for a comparison, two distinct Karyadravyas can never be the same. And it is this difference in the way in which the Panchabahudas are cooperating and work together based on a common minimum program, like a coalition government. That determines the characteristics of that Karyatrivya. That determines the characteristics or uniqueness of that Karyatrivya. Coming to Sharira, in the presence of Atma or Chetana, the Pancha Bhutas reorganize themselves into three. And this threefold organization is easy for them. If you look into the characteristics of Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Jala, and Prithvi, it is very interesting. Sukshma, Visada, Lakhu, we find Akasha. Sukshma, Lakhu, Visada, Ruksha, we find Vayu. Then Sukshma, Visada, Lakhu, Ruksha, Ushna, Tikshna, we find Agni. Then there is a shift. Shita, Snigdha, Drava, we find Jala. Then further, one more step ahead. Sthula, Snigdha, Guru. Then we find Prithvi. So if you look at these characteristics, it is very easy to make a threefold organization. The first two, the middle one, the last two, based on their characteristics. So that happens in the body in the presence of Chetana. And this reorganization is to facilitate the Asti to Vinashyadi journey of that Sharira, which we have seen in detail in our earlier sessions. And the way in which this threefold reorganization of Panchabhutas happening in a given Sharira, that determines the characteristics of that Sharira. But we should not miss the point that the original material cause of any Sharira is Panchamahabhutas. The original material cause. And they only make the Sharira nourished. And the lack of nourishment in terms of these five factors, these Panchamahabhutas, that alone make the body perished. In that Asti to Vinashyati journey, that decline starts with deprival of the capacity to receive, process, transform, and distribute these Panchabhutas. Make two important observations made by acharyas, two or three. One is बीजात्मगैः महाभूतैः सूक्ष्मैः सत्त्वानुगैश्च सह सह गर्भः मादुश्च आहाररसजैः क्रमाद् कुक्षौ विवर्धते. बीजात्मगैः महाभूतैः, बीजात्मगैः महाभूतैः. How do they exist? Sukshmaihi sattvanugaihi cha saha. Then again, maduhu ahararasajaihi cha mahabhudaihi kramad kutshau vivarthate. This is one observation documented. Another observation documented is bhaumapyagneyavyavyaha panjoshmanaha sa nabhasaha panjahara gunan swan swan parthivadin pajandyanu. The first observation I told, Bijatmagaihi Mahabhudaihi, is from the first chapter of Shariram Ashtanga Hridayam. And this one is from the third chapter of Ashtanga Hridayam Shariram. Then in the 46th chapter of Sushruta Samhita Sutrasthanam, we find almost a basic reference for all these things. What is that? Panchabhudatmage dehe hyahara panchabhautikaha vipakvaha panchatha samyag gunan swan abhivardhate. So in all these statements, there is a categorical approach that the basic material cause of Sharira is Panchabhutas. And in two of these statements, they point at the existence of Bhudagnis in Sharira. Bhaumapyagneya vayavyaha panjoshmanaha ushmanaha panchagnayaha sanabhasaha panjahara gunan swan swan parthivadin pajandyanam. So the existence of Bhudagnis in Sharira. It may be very interesting at this point to recollect that we hardly find any statement or documentation on doshagnis. We hardly find any statement on doshagnis. This is because doshas are nothing but the threefold organization of the Bhutas based on the functional categorization. Doshas are nothing but the threefold organization of the Panchabhutas based on the functional categorization. And we find certain statements to support this idea. Vayu akashabhyam vayuhu agneyam pittam ambha prithivibhyam shleshma, etc. So what we are trying to say is that doshas represent the threefold grouping of Panchabhutas, each group accommodating the set of gunas of the corresponding dominant bhutas. Each group accommodating that set of gunas corresponding to the dominating bhutas. Thus, Vayu accommodates the gunas of Vayu and Akasham, and thus it evolves as the agency which owns the responsibility of all the functions done or delivered by these gunas. I repeat, the dosham Vayu, what we call as the Vatam, it accommodates the gunas of Vayu and Akasha, and it evolves as the agency which owns the responsibility of all the functions done by these gunas. Similarly, Pitta evolves as the agency which accommodates Agni gunas, and it owns the responsibility of the karmas delivered by these gunas. And Shleshma evolves as the agency which accommodates the gunas of Prithvi and Jala and owns the responsibility of the karmas delivered by these gunas. So that is how this Panchabhutas and Tridoshas are connected. Panchabhutas are the basic material cause of Sharira. Doshas are just a reorganization of Panchabhutas into three agencies in the presence of Chetana. In an Achetana Dravya, it is meaningless to visualize Tridoshas. Now, with this note in the background, we should look into the concept of what is dosha vriddhi, what is dosha kshaya, etc., etc. So I was discussing about the basics of the basics, nothing new. Basics of the basics, the very fundamentals. And I once again invite you to listen to what we were discussing, contemplate on what we were discussing, so that we can have a finer understanding of what that question. What do you mean by dosha vriddhi? What do you mean by dosha kshaya? Which will be opening up beautiful ideas about understanding Samprapti and designing effective treatments. We will see that in our next sessions. For the time being, we are winding up. Bhishajam sadhuruttanam bhadram agamashalinam abhyastakarmanam bhadram bhadram bhadrabhilashanam. Thank you very much.